Good afternoon from the beautiful campus of Chowan University. I'm Scott Parker, Director of Admissions here for the first of our fall video series here. I've got some very special guests who I'll introduce to you here now. First, we have Miss Amy Denton with CFNC, a longtime friend. I'm sure we'll talk about that somewhere. I've known Amy for, I'm not going to say how long we've known each other because we'll be telling our age, but we've known each other a good while. And she's an expert in a lot of things that she'll be talking about. And then we have our Director of Financial Aid, Ruth Casper, who I've also known for a long time. I actually knew her when she was a student. So she's a little bit younger than me. So we'll give everybody just a minute or two just to get up here. And I see we already have a few viewers on. So we'll give everybody just a minute to get on. But while we're waiting, if you guys would just kind of introduce yourself and kind of what your exact role is.
Sure. I'll go first. I'm Amy with College Foundation, and I am a regional representative for the northeastern part of the state, specifically the 252 area code region. I've been with College Foundation now for 13 years. And prior to coming to CFI, I was Director of Admissions for several years at Barton College. So higher education has been seemingly my entire career for about 24, 25 years now. So I'm very excited about participating with you today, Scott and Ruth, to talk about more opportunities of helping students come to college.
All right, thanks, Amy. My name is Ruth Casper, and I am the Director of Financial Aid here at Chowan. I was also a student here, so I have been here for a number of years, and I serve in the role of helping all of our incoming students, our current students, and their families navigate through creating a successful financial plan to make college affordable.
Sounds good. Well, we'll get started right away because I'm sure there's some people out there watching that are probably like, okay, you're talking about CFNC, but what the heck is CFNC?
All right, good question. CFNC is College Foundation of North Carolina. We have been around in our state for about 20 years now to serve our students and our parents and families to help them with the next steps beyond high school. With the thought of preparing for college, be it a 2-year school or 4-year school or trade school, doesn't matter. Our primary goal, and of course in our state, is to see that our students graduate from high school and be successful members of our society. So College Foundation, with our website, cfnc.org, can help students plan, apply, pay, and save for college. So we have so many resources on our website that can help families in our state, and some of those we're going to talk about today, like submitting applications to college and submitting your electronic high school transcript. As long as you're a member of a public high school in our state, you can submit your transcripts to our colleges in North Carolina. We have tons of resources in addition to the support you're getting from Ruth and the Financial Aid Office to help you understand paying for college and your obligations that you're going to have to help you meet that financial support to go to college. So College Foundation is a free service. The time and the work that I do to serve my area in eastern and northeastern North Carolina is completely free. I work with school counselors and other school personnel to help them understand how to use our site to help their students to prepare for college. So we're doing presentations a lot of time in schools, elementary, middle, and high schools, and in college settings to make sure that they know that we're here to serve them, and again, completely for free. CFNC is a partnership, I should say. We are a collaboration. We don't do everything ourselves at College Foundation. We have the help with the Department of Public Instruction, our private college sector in the state, our UNC system, as well as the community colleges and the State Education Assistance Authority. We couldn't do everything without those people supporting us and helping us in our efforts. So that's a little bit about who CFNC is.
Okay. And I know the month of October is a big time for CFNC because it's the, I'm going old school here. I almost said college application week, but it's more than that now. It's the countdown to college month.
Yeah.
So talk about countdown to college month and also the college application week, or this year college application weeks.
Absolutely. For many years now in North Carolina, we have had an initiative in our state to help schools push applications for admissions, completing the Fafsa, the free application for federal student aid, the form that all students will need to complete in order to find out can they get financial assistance to go to college. And we push North Carolina Residency, which is fairly new in North Carolina. It's only been around for a couple years now, maybe 4 or 5 years. So those are 3 big things that we know high school seniors, high school graduating seniors, need to do as they are progressing toward these steps of going to college. So North Carolina Countdown to College has been designated the month of October, for the month of October, and we push those items through schools so that they can push their students and their parents to complete those items. You're right, Scott. College application week, which we've always had up to this year. For many years, it's been 1 week. Well, this year, we've got a lot of support from all of our colleges in the state to have 2 weeks. So starting next Monday, October 19th through the 30th, students in North Carolina wishing to attend multiple institutions in our state can apply for free. So no application fees will be charged. But the catch is, and I want to make sure students understand this, they must come through CFNC.org first. You can't just go out to the college's portal and complete the application if they have one there. You can't just go out to the common application if by chance it's a school that requires the common app. You have to come through CFNC first. So those 2 weeks in our state, we have 100 out of our 111 institutions waiving application fees. 58 community colleges in our state are free anyway, so that's good. You never have to pay to apply for a community college. This year, 33 of our 36 private or independent institutions, like you at Chowan, are waiving your application fees, and 9 of our 16 UNC system schools are waiving their application fees. So just come to CFNC, get the process started, and when you get to the end of the application, when it's time to submit, you'll see that you are having your application fee waived. And application fees can be expensive. $25 to as much as $75, $80 or more. So what a great savings for families, and certainly in the state of our nation right now, to be keeping some money in their pocket instead of forking out to pay for application fees.
Right.
So we're very excited.
Yeah. And, with that, you talked about how to go in and apply for application week. But I know, like here at Chowan, as are many schools at this point, we've gone, at least for the time being, test optional. So that means for, freshman students coming in, really, once they do that application, all we need is the transcript. So if they're a North Carolina student and they go to a public school, you said they can actually go in and request their transcript through CFNC and have it sent to how many schools at one time?
They can submit their transcript up to 5 colleges at one time. So they can pick 5 colleges and press the little button to send their transcript, and that transcript will be delivered to all 5 of those institutions at the same time. So that's a wonderful feature. And how do students get there? They go through their application hub. And, they'll see when they get to College Foundation's site that we have plan, apply, pay, and save. So you go through the apply to college section and choose the application hub to begin the applications and to request the transcript. And it's a great tracking tool too, because students can see when they requested those transcripts and when those applications for admissions were delivered and uploaded by the institution that they sent them to. So all of that information has a date and a timestamp to prove that their request was fulfilled successfully. So it's a great tracking mechanism to stay within CFNC too, to send transcripts.
Right. And students, I know I called on Amy several times this summer because I had some students, because of the pandemic. They weren't able to get in touch with people at school. So this goes independent of your school. So if you're like, we're still doing Plan C, we're doing remote learning, I can't get in touch with my counselor, this takes all of that out of the equation. So basically, you do that CFNC application, go in there, request that transcript be sent to Chowan. That's all we need to give you an admission decision. And within 2 to 3 business days, we'll give you an admission and scholarship decision on our end. Other schools may be different, but that's the way we do it. We make it nice and simple. Now, obviously, we talked about CFNC and being from North Carolina, but if a student, say, is out of state, we have a lot of students that come to Chowan from Virginia and Maryland. Say if they're out of state and they want to use CFNC for some of the functions, is there still stuff that can benefit them?
Absolutely. They can still use our site to understand part of that financial obligation that Ruth is going to talk more about. What's the difference between grants, scholarship, loans, and all that good stuff. They can still use us for their career resources. We have lots of career assessment. Maybe that's a student that they don't know yet what they want to major in when they get to Chowan. Maybe they can take one of our assessments and start to explore their career opportunity. So we don't limit that just to our North Carolina students. Out-of-state students have that access. They can't send transcripts, of course, but they can still use our financial tools. They can still use our career tools to help them plan for the next step. And, what better way to begin the preparation for college to have a better idea of what I want to do and what I want to major in, and then to use those resources to make sure they're verifying what they want, and sometimes finding out new avenues. Maybe they never thought they could be this type of career or major in college, but they're realizing some of those career aspirations by exploring our site.
Yeah, and it's been a while since I've navigated that part of the site, but I remember they can actually go in there and, like, if they want to do a certain major, then they're able to just go in there and actually search, and it shows them every university or community college that has that, correct?
Right, you're right. We have a new college search with our brand new launch of CFNC.org. It needed an overhaul, and thankfully, in the past couple of years, we've been planning for that step. Well, the 1st of August or September, whenever it was, we launched the new website. So we have a new college search feature with more filters. So the student can go through those filters and decide what's the best choices for them for selecting a college. So based on their 4-year private schools like you are, or 4-year public, if they want nursing as a major, biology, they can search the institutions in our state that have those designated majors through those filters. Maybe the size of campus is important to them. Maybe they're looking specifically at a small size campus and rural or suburban, whatever it may be. So they have the option to fine tune or to narrow. And, schools and school counselors and parents and everyone else, adults, tell students to begin narrowing down their searches for college so that they're not applying perhaps to 10, 15, 20 colleges. Narrow that down to perhaps under 10, maybe 5, maybe your top 3. And using a college search feature like what we have at CFNC can help them. There's so many other opportunities from a federal level to third-party vendors that have these types of college searches. But if you're already going to be using CFNC for a lot of your application and scholarships and financial aid, why not just stay on our site to do some of these other tools and resources when you're utilizing the site anyway? So.
Right. And absolutely. And one of the things you said, I think, is really important. You're talking about narrowing down schools, because I talk to students all the time and they're like, we don't really know how to narrow down schools. We don't really know, what we're doing there. And they want to come visit schools. So I think that's a great way they can look and say, okay, does this school have my major? Okay, Chowan has my major. I want to come visit. By the way, while we're talking about visits, we are currently doing visits for students if they want to visit. We're just not doing large group settings. So individual visits, you are allowed to come visit. You can schedule your visit at the end of this broadcast. We'll talk more about that. And we have a virtual visit on Friday with our preview day, and we've got some videos and things. So if you want to register for that, we'll tell you at the end of the broadcast how to do that too. So now we're kind of transitioning from just CFNC specific stuff to more the financial aid process, because it is October. Like you said, people are beginning to talk about that. So this is kind of a free-for-all. You guys can just kind of feed off of each other on this one. But what is the importance of applying for the FAFSA early?
So I'll take that one, Scott.
Okay.
We encourage that all students apply for financial aid using the FAFSA. It doesn't matter what your background is, where your financial status is. We recommend that every student that is a U.S. citizen or an eligible non-citizen to complete the FAFSA. Why? Because we want to know and we want to be able to assist you with any avenue that is available to you. That could be from the federal government. That could be from your state, both North Carolina and other states, and what Chowan has to assist you to make college affordable for you. So we do encourage you to apply early. There are many things that are more of a first come, first serve, or you're put into a pool and based on the timing of your application determines whether you're funded or not. Some of those programs include both at the federal level, the educational grants from the federal government, and at the state level for North Carolina, your North Carolina scholarships, depending on which sector of North Carolina education you're looking at, whether it's the private institutions, community college system, or the UNC system. So I recommend that you do it now. If you're a current student here at Chowan or elsewhere and you're listening to our broadcast today, we have been making phone calls. So you've probably gotten phone calls from us to schedule an appointment. We're taking appointments here in our office on an individual basis if necessary. We can do them like this, where we do them through Zoom and other capabilities. If you need assistance, and some of you are good at it. Some of you can do it on your own and you say, I got this. Not a problem. New students, we are welcoming the exact same. If you happen to be here visiting on campus individually and you want to do your FAFSA, you can let your visit coordinator know that you need a financial aid appointment as well. Or we can do some electronic communications, whether it's pick up the phone and call or whether we do them through Zoom or other platforms.
And, that's something I'll say about Chowan that I really like is that we're a team effort. You have your admissions counselor, but we in our office work very closely with financial aid and the business office. So we're not going to leave you hanging out there to dry. We're going to help you. We know it's different and weird and something you've never done before. So, we can definitely help you with that. I didn't know if you were going to say something there, Amy.
No, I was just going to wait for you to ask the next
Okay. I saw you unmute. I just didn't want to cut you off.
That's okay.
Okay, so another strange little term, FAFSA is a strange word or acronym. Another strange little acronym we hear is Fsa Id. And I'm sure people are thinking, what the heck is that and how do I create it?
Ruth, I'll let you take that. And then if I think of anything that sometimes I think students have questions or concerns about, I might follow up.
Okay. So your FSA ID is your unique username and password. Don't ask me why they decided to change the name of it. Essentially, that's what it is. The federal government needs to know that Caitlin is about to do a FAFSA and her mom is there with her. Caitlin's FSA ID is unique to her email account, and whatever password she creates. It's her digital signature. Mom, Dad, you need one as well, unique to you, so that when you go to fill out the FAFSA, Caitlin signs, and then one of the parents sign on the FAFSA as well. Think of it, and I'm going way back, think of it like a PIN number. Every time you go to use your card, if you don't choose credit, they're going to ask for your PIN number to identify you. This is your electronic identification. So you need to store it. I tell people that I meet with, put it in the notes on your phone, but make sure that it's one of those protected notes so that you know what it means. You can do a restore in case you forget it. Not a problem. We're pros here at unlocking it. If you need help, just let us know.
And I was going to add that quite often we get this question from CFNC, and maybe you can help with this, Ruth. They need this every year for the purpose of applying for that child's FAFSA. And even if they have another student in the household that's coming up to college after this one, that parent still uses that ID to identify themselves on that other student's FAFSA.
Yes.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
see that quite often, I'm sure, with multiple dependents going to college. Yeah.
We do. So in the event that you have a sibling, let's say I'm in my junior year and my brother's getting right to come in as a freshman, whether he comes here or whether he goes elsewhere, when my parents sit down to do the FAFSA, they still use mom's one ID because her ID is unique to just her as a person. She doesn't have to have one for each of her children. Now, each of the children have separate ones. So I have mine, my brother has his, but mom has one.
And helpful hint, guys, when you're doing that FSA ID, not only do you need to save that FSA ID, but it makes you go in there and create questions,
Yes.
Security questions. Make sure you put questions that you know how to answer. So students, don't let mom fill this out. And if mom does do it, make sure that you're sitting there so you can tell her the answer to the question, because it might say, what was my first car or something. I don't know that that's one of them, but if it did, mom might put her first car. Well, your first car might be a Mustang. Her first car might have been like mine. It might have been an old Dodge Colt, so you want to make sure that, or what high school did you go to or something like that. You want to make sure it's something that you know the answer to. So tell mom, you can do the FAFSA, you can put all the money stuff in, but I need to create the FSA ID so I can easily unlock it if I forget my password.
That's right.
Okay, so after they've done the FAFSA, say in Amy's scenario, they looked at 15 or 16 schools. Well, now they've narrowed it down to, say, 2 or 3 or 5 or whatever. And some of the schools they've narrowed it down to are not, were not originally put on their FAFSA, because you can do, correct me if I'm wrong, 10 schools, I think, on your FAFSA. So how would they go in there and add a school or take a school off of their FAFSA?
So the nice thing now, and I'll show you this, you probably can't see a whole lot of it, is 2 ways. You can do it online through the FAFSA's website, or you can do it through their app. So on your phone, you can do the app, or you can come in and actually log in to your FAFSA, and you make a correction. There's a little blue link. You click on it, and it allows the student to get back into the FAFSA. Once you pull your FAFSA up, there's little links across the top, and you go to school selection, and you can edit your schools. So say you only put your first 3 schools, and now you've decided, well, you know what? I think I want to look at this place. My buddy's going, and they seem really good. Let me add them too. So you can add on or take off any schools up to 10. And you can submit that correction. Because you only changed a school, it may not prompt you for the parent to re-sign, because that's the only thing you change. And those are quick, easy turnaround. They typically turn those around at the processor and send it back out to the schools in about a 3-day window. Your initial application, if you do the very first FAFSA, you and mom or you and dad, that could take 5 to 7 days sometimes to get to the schools. If it is not signed with your FSA ID, it could be up to 2 weeks. So that's why we stress the importance of remembering that FSA ID.
Okay, and when you said that, it made me think of another question, but go ahead, Amy, and then I'll ask that question.
I was going to say, Ruth, maybe you need to remind them what's the name of that app that they can download through the iPhone and or their Droid or whatever you call it.
Can't see it. Well, you can see my daughter there. It's the My Student Aid app. And it says Federal Student Aid when it comes up. And you can get that both in the App Store and the Google Play Store.
Yeah, I learned that. I didn't know that. But when you were talking about,
it's simple. I'm, as a director of financial aid, I'm in October 1st. When I wake up, or if I'm up at midnight, I go ahead and do my FAFSA. Why? Because I want to be able to help you through it in case you have questions. Literally, I got up that morning, logged on it on my phone, and I was done within 5 minutes. So parents, your very first time around, it might take you a little bit longer, but the FAFSA is very efficient and quick, especially when they ask for your tax information. It's going to ask for your 2019 data, and it has a IRS retrieval option. So if you make it through the IRS retrieval tool, it pulls in all of your taxes. You don't even need your tax return sitting in front of you unless you question how your address is keyed in. It's that simple. You could be done as quick as 5 to 10 minutes.
The question that I thought about that we get asked all the time is how do you determine a parent? Like, in other words, if they come from a split household and maybe you've got mom and stepdad, or dad and stepmom, or just a single mom or a single dad, how do you determine who goes on the FAFSA?
So there's a couple of different scenarios. The first is typical. I live with mom and dad. Then mom and dad is who's on the FAFSA. I live with mom and stepdad, or dad and stepmom. That is the household. That is who you report. If you live in a single parent household and mom provides over 50% of your support, then mom is the person you list. If you are a joint custody situation in which I go to dad for a week, I live with mom for a week, you really need to weigh out who is the greater supporting factor there and who goes on your FAFSA. In some instances, if you were from a household in which you were adopted, you would list the adopted parents' information. When you do the FAFSA, there are several questions. They call it the dependency status, where they're going to ask you, were you born before a certain point? Are you married? Are you working on a master's degree or a doctorate degree? Are you homeless? Are you at risk for homelessness? Or are your parents deceased, or are you considered a ward of the court? And those individual questions, if you can answer yes to any of those, it will bypass the parent option. And so it's looking solely at student data. And when it comes into your individual schools, your schools will reach out to you for more information.
Now,
Scott, I have something else to add to that, because we get this a lot, Ruth and Scott, when we're at CFNC doing presentations, back to those dependency questions. And sometimes they just don't quite understand the difference between a guardianship and a custody. Like if a grandparent, they're living with the grandparent, and we know grandparents, unless they adopted the student, they can't file a FAFSA. So how do we best tell students who are not in a typical parent situation how best to file the FAFSA?
There is one question after you go through all of those dependency questions. The very next question is, are you able to provide parental data? And if you answer no, because you're in one of those unique circumstances that you've lived with your aunt since you were 2, or your grandmother's had you and has cared for you for a number of years, you answer no, I cannot provide parental data. That is an indicator to the school that we have a little bit more research that we need to do with you on how to determine your financial status. And that's when each school individually may ask you as a student and your caregiver for some additional resources on what the circumstances are. And in those cases, there are times where we might consider that student to be an independent student. But that is at each school's discretion and what they ask for and how they come about their determination.
And that was actually what I was going to ask Amy about, because we get a lot of that, grandma, and as far as grandma's concerned, grandma's mom, because that's the only mom they've ever known. And so they put grandma on the FAFSA only to find out later that, she wasn't supposed to. She's like, what do you mean I'm not their mama? I've raised them her whole life. So, that's something we get. And kind of piggybacking off that, just again, we talked obviously about the grandma situation and things, but what makes somebody dependent versus independent?
Well, we went over a lot of that. If you are born before a certain date, if you're married, if you have children that you're providing at least 50% of their support, if you are an orphan or ward of the court, those, or you're a veteran, those are questions that make you automatically independent. We may have to do some behind the scenes, just documentation of certain areas of that. But in the federal government circumstance, they're going to bypass your parent data and not ask you for parent tax information. The normal student dependent.
Yeah. And once a student graduates with their bachelor's degree, because I get this a lot of times too, you mean I still have to fill out my FAFSA for my student once they graduate with their bachelor's? And the answer is no, because they automatically become independent then.
Because their degree changes.
Yes, the degree changes. So that changes their their status as well to independent.
So, good question, Amy. For any of you that are logged on and are listening to us today in regards to our new master's programs, when you go to fill out your FAFSA, and I've seen a few of them come in the last day or two, it shouldn't be asking you for parent level data. It should be only asking student and spouse if you're married at this point.
Good.
And then, with that, another question we get a lot is somebody's like, I have my own apartment. I pay my own bills. My mama doesn't help me any. Why do I have to put my mom on the FAFSA?
In that case, unless you can answer yes to one of those federal dependency questions, sounds to me like you're still going to have to add mom or dad. Just
And
because you're able to provide for yourself, the federal government's not going to look at it that way.
And what about, Ruth, if it's the situation of regarding, you have to report the number of people in the household?
Mm-hmm.
And what if it is that older brother who hasn't turned 24 years of age, who's not married, none of those dependency type questions are satisfied, and they've chosen to move out of the home and live on their own? Can that person still be counted in the family household if they themselves were at the point that they wanted to apply for financial aid? Wouldn't they be considered dependent? So can that parent still count them in the household?
So let me make sure I heard you correctly. Older sibling, but not old enough to be independent.
Right.
Just decided to rent the apartment across the street.
Mm-hmm.
But doesn't meet any of the other criteria.
Right.
Okay. That student is still going to be on his FAFSA, on the older brother's FAFSA. He's dependent. He hasn't met the criteria yet.
Mm-hmm. So the parent can count them as a member of the total numbered household.
On the student's FAFSA, on older brother's FAFSA, he's going to say, I am dependent. I still have to include my mom, even though I don't live with her. She is my parental figure. It's going to ask to include her in her household.
Right. Gotcha. I know that's a common occurrence that, we say siblings that have moved out of the household. And when it asks that question, parents don't sometimes know who to count as a member of the household.
Well, and what I'm seeing now is the opposite of that.
Mm-hmm.
That older sibling has moved home because of the pandemic. They may have lost their job and they're not able to support themselves on their own anymore. So we have seen some requests where it's been, the number in my household has changed. It's gone up because my sister, her brother had to move back in because they lost their apartment because they weren't working, or they had to move home for different reasons. And now my mom is supporting that person again.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask. Like if you had, that older brother that was, say, 30 years old, or you had grandma living there, if they went on the household, but you guys, did address that. So that's good. Because and I do see that more and more. And I think because of, just the current situation with what's going on. So moving on to like different types of financial aid and things. Something that we've talked about a little bit and alluded to was North Carolina monies. So talk about North Carolina residency and kind of what it is and how you go about finding out if you qualify.
You want me to start that, Ruth?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. North Carolina residency has been around for ever how many years now? I don't even remember, Ruth. 5, 6 years now. It's the centralized way that we determine who are residents of our state so that those public institutions, because there are differences in tuition cost, in-state or out-of-state, can charge them correctly, can charge them in-state tuition rate. And we need to know if indeed they're residents of our state, that they can be considered for those state grants. So again, the residency is through CFNC.org. So that's where the students will register and log in and complete their interview with their username and password. So as they go through the residency, if it's determined that they are a North Carolina resident, then they're good. They'll get that residency certification number, the RCN. That's the end result of their residency interview. And that RCN is used on college applications for that college to know their status. Now, colleges, and Ruth, you have also mechanism on the back end to retrieve those RCNs, I understand. But it's very important that colleges get that data at the processing stages of financial aid to know what types of dollars to consider them. And I know you've seen cases, probably, Ruth, of students making errors and they get out-of-state statuses, though they know they're an in-state resident. Do you know more about that reconsideration or appeal process that they have to go through? Have you seen many of those in your students' cases?
So it's a good question. So for us here at Chowan, your tuition, regardless of North Carolina, Virginia, wherever, your base tuition, what you pay for your educational portion, is not differentiated by your state. Your housing options and things like that can make a difference, but what you pay in tuition here is going to be the same. But we use that North Carolina residency to determine your state grant, and that's one of the grants that you need to apply for early. That's why it's important to do your Fafsa early, so that you stay in that funded pool of people. So when you go in and do that NC residency, at the very bottom, it's going to tell you in-state or out-of-state. If you're a North Carolina resident and you've lived here for 18 years and it tells you that you're out of state, there are a couple of things I think where it might have gone wrong. If you skipped a question regarding your parents, because it will go into what I consider kind of the nitty gritty, and down in the weeds, it's going to ask you, what's your parent's driver's license number? Or is your parent registered to vote? What is their voter registration number? Or what's your vehicle license plate number? And you might think, why do you need that? I'm going to skip that question. Behind the scenes, they actually are able to match through database matches. Do your parents pay property taxes or vehicle taxes? That's why they ask that question, to help show that they're a North Carolina abiding citizen. They ask about voter registration so that they know, is your parent a voter here in the state? Are they exercising those things that indicate your residency or their residency? They look at driver's license. Are you in the North Carolina driver's license database to validate your residency? And there are other questions they ask along the way. But I do see, if you skip that question or a area of those questions, where they will automatically determine you as out of state. So what do? The first thing you do is you log back in your application. Most of the time, they may ask for some supporting documents, and they only give you a certain number of days to turn your documents in. And if you don't do that, then it's more of a hardened, you're out of state. You can also ask them, step one, after not doing your documents, give me one more time. Let me file a reconsideration. What's a reconsideration for that? Means let me open the app up one more time and let me really answer all those questions I skipped. If you do that and it comes back again that says, nah, something didn't match, out of state. Your second time is you can actually file an appeal. That appeal says, I did everything you asked, but I've lived here 18 years, and so has my mom. But my mom doesn't know how to drive. My mom doesn't have a license. My mom is on a fixed income. You get the opportunity at that time to present your case to someone at RDS or the State Education Assistance Authority so that they can understand your exceptional circumstance to be considered both in-state tuition status and for North Carolina state funds.
So it sounds like you're saying when the student fills out this NC residency, it's probably a good idea to have their parent at least accessible while they're doing it, because they're going to need their information. Correct.
Or if you happen to look on our website under the FA forms, chowan.edu/FA-forms, I believe, we have an NC residency kind of how-to that tells you when you are preparing to do this application, please think ahead and have XYZ available to help you through it.
And some of that information is on the NC residency website too. Right. That same documentation that they could find through ncresidency.org.
Yeah, because I think that's always something that I get. The kids like it. didn't go through, or it's asking for my mom's voter registration and I don't have a clue what that is and she's at work. And I'm like, well, just wait till she comes home and try again.
And your CFNC login should be tied to your NC residency login. So if you already have a CFNC account, getting into residency is that much easier.
Yeah, so don't lose that CFNC login either. So switching gears a little bit. So now the FAFSA has been submitted. They've turned in their NC residency. They get something from Chowan saying you're chosen for verification. What does verification mean?
So the government, when they go through and they look at all the FAFSAs that are completed, they randomly pull about a third of applicants to say, I want to make sure what you did is correct. Doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It just means they want to make sure that you got everything in the right place. They understand that it can be kind of complex if it's your first go around. So what that means is we may ask you for your tax transcript and W-2s, or potentially a tax return and all schedules, and a verification worksheet. What do we do with it? Behind the scenes, our office goes in and we take that tax document and we compare it to your FAFSA. And we say, no, you know what? They did pick up the wrong line for taxes paid. Let me fix that number. Or this needed to go there, or they put this in the wrong place. This doesn't belong at all. We will make those corrections for you so that your FAFSA is accurate and we can present you with the best possible financial aid package. So you may see that, and you'll get letters from us and other schools as you add other schools, not that I'm telling you to, but as you have different schools on your FAFSA, you may get those. I got them all 4 years I was in college. Nothing I could do about it. It's just the simple way it fell, and I just had to do it. But the quicker that you turn your documents in, the sooner that we can get you into that pool of students that can be in our first batch of award packages.
Okay, so kind of going back to they've gotten their FAFSA filled out, but when they filled it out, they're thinking, oh my goodness, we went off of the 2019 tax return. Since then, we've had a change in income due to job loss, due to a death in the family, divorce, whatever the case may be. What can a student do at that point?
So at that point, I recommend that you contact each of your schools. So if you are really strongly considering 3 schools, then I would reach out to those 3 schools and I'd say, here's what happened. Here's what I see now. I see a lot of families that they spent 3.5 months out of work due to the pandemic. What I ask them to do is to provide me with pay stubs from prior to the pandemic to now that they've gone back to work. And that allows me to get a picture of that chunk of time that they were out of work. Contact your schools. They may ask for different documentation based on the circumstance. That's just one is an option based on the pandemic, that they can go in and make some concessions on your FAFSA that says, even though in 2019, which is on the FAFSA, they made $90,000. By the time their 20 tax return comes out, they may have only made $70,000. So we do have the ability, granted by the federal government, to go in and make those adjustments to see if we can adjust your award package to more accurately reflect the here and now income versus the 19 income. And that's just income based. It could be circumstances of a separation or a divorce, or change in the number of people in the household like we talked about. You know, maybe you had to take a grandparent in that could no longer afford to live on anymore. So those are just various things that we see come about.
And what about Ruth, Scott, if you don't mind? I used to see when I worked at Barton that the change could be just the opposite of that separation or divorce. If it's a single parent household and then they get married.
Well,
how does that work?
Typically, I don't see very many of those. You see that the next year when you fill out your FAFSA. So your FAFSA is just a snapshot of here is today and now and the tax year prior, or 2 years prior, actually, in this case. So in the event that mom gets married after you do the FAFSA, You don't report step parent until the next FAFSA cycle, which more than likely is going to work out to your advantage your first year, and then you pick up and have to add that parent and their tax information in the following year.
And something that I hear parents say a lot is they're like, well, I had another kid go to college. We didn't get anything. So why do we need to do the FAFSA?
Still do it. I encourage you to do it the first year. And if it appears not to be to your advantage, or you're not interested, or you didn't qualify for something, you don't have to continue to do it subsequent years unless there is something that changed that you feel like, now I really do need to look into it. But I still recommend it your first year at a very minimum.
Something else. So talk a little bit about, I get a lot of questions about work study and, federal work study versus they don't have that on their package. Can they still work in college? Those sort of things.
So federal work study is a limited amount of money that we receive from the federal government. Each year we get a new pool of money, and that can be for different amounts at different schools. For us, doing your FAFSA early puts you into that pool of potential possibilities for your award package. So we do encourage that you do it soon. Work study is probably one of the very first funds that we tend to run out of, and that's typically by February. So I would still go ahead and get your FAFSA in. Let's say it's May. You just got your award package and it doesn't list work study because we were out of funding at the time. That doesn't necessarily mean that come August that you can't have a job here on campus. As we determine enrollment and we are able to remove any aid on students that may not have enrolled, we may actually free up some funding that we can then go back and make more work study awards. So just because you may not see it to begin with doesn't mean that it may not happen by the time school starts. The majority of our students that are eligible for work study, for federal work study, money from the federal government, that are able to find job placement here on campus are funded through our federal program. But it is a very rapidly depleting fund once we start. So I encourage you to get in that group as soon as possible.
Do you guys have work study jobs off campus that your students can participate in, whether it's the federal or your institutional work study?
We do have some federal off-campus positions. Right now, they're not operating due to the pandemic, but we typically have some reading and math tutors at our local elementary school, and some library assistants at the public library here in town.
And Ruth, some of obviously you talked about those off campus, but just particularly for parents, because we get a lot of people ask, if my kid works, how many hours are they working a week and kind of what kind of jobs are they doing?
So on average, our students work about 8 hours a week. We have to make sure that they have enough time for course classroom first, because they are here for their education. Study time second, because that goes right along with their education. And then if they're able to work a job in the part-time status. But like I said, most students are going to work 8 hours or roughly less than that a week. Each department works around their class schedule or their athletic schedule if they have that, and other things that they may have going on. They work anywhere from our administrative offices, financial aid, business office, residence life, admissions, to actually being within their academic division. It might be the psychology department or tutoring or the writing center. And then we have our other departments like athletics and the Jenkins Center, or the cafeteria, where students can work to have some degree of earnings while they're here. We do not stipulate what they use their earnings for. So they are paid once a month via paper check at this time for the hours that they've worked the month prior. So they get paid, let's see, it's October now, so they'll get paid November 5th for hours worked from the end of September through October 25th. And if they need to, if for some reason the student has an agreement here with the institution to use some of their work study check to pay on their balance, then certainly when they pick up their check, they can do it at that time.
And it's a great resume builder, is it not? Can they use the job on the resume?
Yes.
And like when you, for the students, when you come visit campus, our tour guides that you see and that you meet with, they're actually, you know, some schools they're volunteers or they're voluntold because it's part of an obligation for a scholarship. For us, it's their job. So they get paid to do it. So if they don't do a good job, they don't get paid. So, you know, we do pay them. So if your student is interested in doing that down the road, you know, that could be a possibility as well. The last formal question I have here. So if someone files a FAFSA now, when do they typically hear back from colleges to let them know what they'll receive?
Each college is a little different. For us, we typically try to work out a first batch of award packages, typically before Christmas, if we are at that point. Some of that depends on various things outside of our control. It could depend on us waiting on the federal government to tell us the grant allocation for the Pell Grant coming up. It could be the state of North Carolina telling us to use the current North Carolina awarding table, things like that can tend to slow things down a little bit. Or it may be that we're able to get a batch of packages out before Christmas, and then once we return after the holiday break, then we will start up again and get the next batch out. But every school can be a little different. So that is something, as you are doing your school comparisons, that you want to look into at each individual school.
That's all the formal questions I have, but I know the three of us have not been together in a while, so I'm sure there may be questions that, you know, we have, you know, for the audience watching, or that we have for each other before we end for the day.
I had a thought maybe we should talk about, if you don't mind, I can share the resources for our state-based scholarships.
Sure.
And maybe list some of those national scholarship databases that we recommend to students a lot. So there's so many different areas and places where you can have research scholarships and get scholarship funding from. You know, think about your local community. Right there within wherever you live, are you eligible for any of their locally based scholarships? And they typically come through their counseling offices. So make sure you're contacting your school counselor or your web pages on your websites for that information. Look at scholarships through your institution. Ruth, do you guys have scholarships? Are they eligible for first-time freshmen and or for like students specifically in their major? Do they have to pursue them, or do you have the option to award them first?
So for us, it's a little bit of both. When we receive your FAFSA, as we're evaluating you for financial aid, we will consider you for anything that the financial aid office has the ability to award. Then we do have some additional ones that go through admissions, such as our Chowan scholarship days. And then there are some of those outliers that are division specific, some of the newer ones like biology, or then some of the outside ones as well. For those that are local to our area, if your parent is an employee of the steel mill here, there's an educational opportunity there for some financing. Through the state, obviously, we're going to look at your North Carolina need-based scholarship, which is based on your FAFSA. But there's also the Gold Leaf Scholarship that students can apply through the state. There is the Luther Butler Scholarship through the Baptist organization. So there are several, and there's more than that. That's just off the top of my head, outside resources in addition to what we do here at Chowan.
And there's also merit-based scholarships, Amy. So students, when they get accepted, can get up to $9,000 in academic scholarship money.
Right. That's cool. What a great, for some schools, it can be a drop in the bucket, but for other schools on top of other aid, it could really make a difference. And we have, for our North Carolina residents, a fairly long list, including like the Golden Leaf that Ruth mentioned, at cfnc.org/scholarships. So if they go out there, just like we have that new college search tool that I told you about earlier, if you go out to cfnc.org and reach out to our scholarship portal, you can do a search for scholarships to see if you match any of the criteria for the ones that we have. So from a local level, an institutional level, a state level, and then fourthly, we talk about a lot our national databases of scholarships, like through College Board, where students may register for their SAT. Their portal is called Big Future, so you can go out to bigfuture.org, and there are tons of nationally based scholarships that they have. We also share a lot with CFNC, fastweb.com. We have petersons.com. They have a wonderful scholarship search feature. And another one that we recommend is collegegreenlight.com. And go ahead, Ruth. I think you have.
I wanted to throw out there too. We also have resources for our military families.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are a veteran spouse or veteran themselves or veterans dependent, we are a VA benefits participating school, which I am a certifying official, so I can provide you with more information on that. But we also on our Chowan webpage, under the scholarship section in financial aid, have various resources based on the branch of the military and other scholarship resources there for our veterans families as well.
Okay, so I did have a question come in during that question, and they wanted me to ask, what if parents say no to filling out the FAFSA?
In the context of, does that mean I'm independent?
I think it just means like parents just refuse. They're like, we don't want to put our information out there. We're not going to do it, or we're not going to help you by doing it. I'm not sure which exactly, but I think that's what they mean.
I would encourage the student to reach out to us individually or reach out to their school of choices individually, because a lot of times when a parent, the initial reaction is, I'm not giving you my tax return. You're my child. I love you, but you have no need to know what your mom and I make. I would encourage the student to coordinate where the financial aid office and the parent can have a conversation. A lot of times, once we're able to discuss that the need to supply your tax information doesn't equal the need for you to pay for their education, we typically can come to terms where we can at least get the FAFSA done at a minimum.
One thing I wanted to add, I know you alluded to it earlier, Ruth, but we do have several events I wanted to talk about as far as one is an opportunity to get more money, which is Scholarship Day. That's coming up here in just a few weeks, and it is an opportunity for students to interview for scholarships up to an additional $6,000 per year. Now, with that, it is going to be virtual this year, at least for this first one. So the registration form is already there. You can register for it, and then we'll work with you to schedule an interview. Plus, we have the merit scholarships. But on this Friday, we do have our virtual visit day. It's called CU Preview Friday. It's the first time we've done one on a Friday, but I think it'll be fun because we've got two different student panels. We've got one at 10 o'clock, one at 2 o'clock, and then you'll get to hear from our admissions staff. You'll get to meet pretty much all of our staff will be on it on that day. So you'll get to meet. You'll get to meet all of them. And then I had I think a follow-up question to that other question that says, parents said they won't get any help with filling it out, like monetary help. So I think that's why they don't want to fill it out. So how can we encourage them, to say, let's give it a try?
Then that goes back to that point of let's try it the first time. There are different resources that you may qualify for that you don't realize are available. A lot of North Carolina families that I see that have that same thought of, I make too much, there's no need in it. They may actually qualify for, at a minimum, the North Carolina need-based scholarship, because there are certain thresholds that if you make, if you're EFC on the FAFSA, if what the government says your estimated contribution should be, if it's less than 16,000, then you go into that pool of potential eligibility for the state scholarship. That's worth taking those few minutes to get the FAFSA done. And if it turns out that after the first time that you're still in that same thought process of, I don't want to do it again, no harm. We can certainly make sure to make that note in your record moving forward.
And it's worth giving it a chance.
Exactly.
I tell kids all the time, or in parents sometimes when they say that, not that I'm a lottery player, but you don't win the lottery if you don't play the lottery. So you can't get financial aid if you don't fill out that FAFSA. So take the chance. It's worth it.
Yeah. And you never know if something were to happen 6 months into your freshman year and your parent unexpectedly loses the job, then we automatically have the ability to go in and make those concessions that we talked about for loss of income. And you will have already done your FAFSA the first time, so we can make that process a little bit quicker for you.
Right. Well, like I said, that's all the questions I had. Do you guys have anything else?
I can't think of anything else. We've covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah. So it's been fun getting back together. I look forward to Amy and I are lunch buddies when we travel together. So if any of you are ever wondering where to go eat, if it's in Eastern North Carolina, between the two of us, we've probably been there and can tell you all about it. So in fact, when we were setting up for this, we were talking about eating lunch. So, we're lunch buddies. So it's good to connect, even though it's virtually. And I look forward to being able to travel some more with her soon. And I'm sure, see Ruth tomorrow, as I do just about every day.
That's right.
But thank you guys for joining us. This video will stay archived on all of our social media platforms where it was posted. So feel free to share it to, parents or students, current or future students that weren't able to see it, because there are good resources here. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And thank you, Amy, and thank you, Ruth, for joining us today.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. Good to see you guys.
We'll see our audience on Friday for the preview day.
That's right.
Take care.
Bye, guys.